So this is another edition of the Heel to the Face podcast. I'm Jared.
I'm Brandon.
And to show how current we are, we just want to let you know that the most recent news in the world of wrestling is Tammy Lee Sitch, formerly known as WWE Sunny, was arrested on weapons possession and making terroristic threats in New Jersey. But I just realized actually I could have been saying that in 2015. So that doesn't really show how current we are at all, because I think you could pretty much be saying that anytime.
Yeah, especially with Sunny. Yeah, Sunny's been in a lot of trouble over the years, so...
The only time she's not in trouble with the law is when she's behind bars. This is the most recent edition of the Heel to the Face podcast, and it starts right now.
Fans celebrate with me from Rome to Rochester.
Bad luck seems to be my middle name. They might as well tag me up with my buddies from Syracuse.
So this is another edition of the Heel to the Face podcast. I'm Jared alongside Brandon. Make sure to follow the show at Heel to the Face. I didn't want to make it seem a little callous that Sunny is in trouble with law, but she always, it's not like we take joy in the fact that she was arrested yet again in her life.
Obviously, we don't wish ill wills against anybody.
No, I mean, if anything, I can imagine that if she never got in trouble with the law and was as available as she is, I'd still date her. Even with the trouble that she has.
We did have a segment a couple months back about Sunny, so.
But this episode of the Heel to the Face podcast, one thing that we talk about, I think, every week we always bring up kind of privately, is the fact that we wonder what we're going to do for our next week's show. And then before we can even wonder, news happens in wrestling. And so much so that this week I decided to pull out a calendar. And what that means is since we
wait, hold on. Wait, Jared, you pulled out a calendar?
Since we last recorded our show, which was last Thursday, and this is Thursday that we're recording now, I've decided to show that each and every single day since recording, there is a topic worthy that happened on that day worth talking about. Thursday, right after we're done recording, Samoa Joe was released.
Of course he was.
But that just goes hand in hand with everything that's been happening in NXT, everybody that's been released, and it just seems par for the course. It's kind of weird, I guess, because that's 2 times in less than a calendar year. Because you forget that Wrestlemania, he sat out there in the rain with Michael Cole and then was released like a week later, came back as a potential competitor, and now has been released again. So it really stinks. I think since his rehiring and now his most recent release, this has to be a Samoa Joe that has done the least.
Yeah, it was like he came back, he was like an authority figure for a second and had a little run, and then he disappeared. Where was he? Yeah. So it's the whole thing with Samoa Joe's odd.
Probably would have done better for him if he just stayed released the first time around.
Yeah, honestly, I just don't want to see him in AEW. I think you got to go other places because there's so much talent. And the problem is, we've talked about it on multiple occasions, that AEW just has way too much talent right now, which is, I know that's not a bad thing. Nobody should be complaining about the talent pool, but when you only have a certain amount of airtime, how often are you getting that talent over at this point? That's the issue. And do you want to have certain talent just sitting on the sidelines, just collecting a check?
All these releases have made WWE obviously have a bad look over the past couple of years. A lot of people have been talking a lot about WWE and their releases, but they did something as we moved to Friday that got people talking again and said, hey, wait a minute, WWE, all of a sudden they're the cool hip kid on the block again when they announced some of the ladies that are going to be in the upcoming Royal Rumble, and nothing gets you more salivated and ready to chomp at the bit for the Royal Rumble than somebody who's not with the company currently, who is actually with another company and holding their championship belt. And we're talking with Mickie James. She's the current Impact Knockouts champion. She was at the time when they announced her name of going to be in the Royal Rumble. She was obviously that name that had the quote-unquote bad time when she got released, her stuff thrown in a garbage bag, and the whole, tweet out there about how she was treated horribly at the end. Well, apparently that shows good, I guess, for WWE because she's coming back.
But in good faith, they WWE fired Mark Carrano for his part in that whole incident. So I think it was a good faith thing where they said to Mickie James, "We're sorry that this happened. We're firing the person."
And she's not super mad because she's coming back.
And I don't know if you saw Gail Kim as well.
Yeah, Gail Kim, who's probably had more time in Impact Wrestling than in WWE. obviously, Gail Kim.
Yeah, Gail Kim's been...
She's an
been
Impact
around.
Hall of Famer. I think it was probably, I don't remember when it was, but it was pretty recently, I feel like, that she had her official Impact retirement match.
Yeah, here's the thing. Gail Kim is... she's one of the best wrestlers in the world. I think she is the best wrestler that Impact's ever had. That's just my opinion.
Ooh, that could be. They've women's or men's or period?
Women's.
Okay, well, then, yes, I would say for sure.
Yeah, men's, even men's included, she'd be up there too. Gail Kim's a hell of a talent.
Yeah, no doubt about it. SmackDown, we also saw that it seems that it's going to be Seth Rollins versus Roman Reigns for the championship. I like that. We were talking about somebody coming over. We were talking about, if Brock Lesnar was to stay on the Raw and challenge the Big E's and the Brock Lesnars, then maybe Roman Reigns has some new people that come over. I thought it'd be more like the Big E coming over from Raw, challenging Roman Reigns, changing things up. But it was Seth Rollins.
And I'll be honest, I think, speaking of Seth Rollins, I think a babyface turn's coming. I just had this feeling, just the way they're setting things up. I think they're setting him up to be a babyface going forward. And I'm excited to see him and Roman tear the house down again, because they always have magic when they're in the ring. So
strange enough, WWE announces Mickie James, and what does that do? That does something that WWE never does. And that makes them look like a philanthropist, as they are giving to another company as we move to Saturday. And Impact Wrestling has Hard to Kill, Deonna Purrazzo versus Mickie James for the Knockouts Championship, which ended up being the main event, partially probably based off the fact that they got that WWE rub.
Of course.
Pushes that match to the final match of the night more than the Impact Men's Championship belt. Also drives up the buy rates for the event, the fact that they're kind of working together. Some people thinking maybe WWE is going to have someone come out, at the Impact show. That didn't happen, but what ended up taking over the news from the Impact show, Mickie James ended up retaining, but what took over the news was Ring of Honor wrestlers come out and invaded a little bit of Impact. You had Mike Bennett, Maria Kanellis, PCO, Vincent, to name a few of the Ring of Honor guys who came out. Obviously, the Ring of Honor Championship was on the line, but then a little Ring of Honor invasion happened at the Impact Wrestling show. And then we move over to Sunday, where those Ring of Honor guys were there for a Impact TV taping, watching over, kind of making it seem like this invasion's going to last a little bit longer. But during that taping, what the news of the day was, Charlie Haas made a return to the world of wrestling, or at least to the world of wrestling that I pay attention to. And he participated in the Impact TV taping the day after Hard to Kill. So Charlie Haas back. You got Shelton Benjamin still doing his thing over on Raw. We'll talk about that in a minute as we move to Monday.
Sure.
But Charlie Haas, I didn't see that name coming. I thought his days in the world of wrestling.
So what was the thoughts on Charlie Haas coming back? Was it positive? Does he look good in the ring?
I haven't seen the match yet. This was at an Impact taping.
Also, it's taped. Okay.
So it could potentially be tonight's Impact to watch. As they are starting to celebrate, they're moving forward pretty well. They're starting to celebrate their 20th year in business. That's their new thing they're trying to put with their logo and make sure to put the point out there how long they've been in business. But Impact Wrestling, since that, they've been announced, which is probably, we talked about this last year. They were one that was hurting a lot with their no crowds and their
100%
no even fan noise. It was silent. They're starting to go on tour again. They're coming to New Orleans. They're going to Philly. They're going to Florida. They're going to be a part of WrestleCon in Dallas. The next big pay-per-view is going to be in Poughkeepsie in New York. We're talking about an indie wrestling show that's happening there in a few weeks.
Yes, we did.
They're going to host their next pay-per-view from that same spot, the Mid-Hudson Civic Center in Poughkeepsie, New York. And New York I feel like Impact Wrestling, it's been a long time since they've been to New York, for the fact that they've been Florida-based and then they were Nashville-based. So essentially, they haven't really been traveling too much outside of those big markets.
That region.
Now they're moving back up to the Northeast, you know what I mean? Because it took even a while for AEW. When they started to travel and WWE started to travel, the first SmackDowns and Raws were Texas and Florida.
Well, yeah, the looser restricted stage.
So, the fact that Impact's going to be, New York, Philly, New Orleans, Texas, they're moving around.
Which is a good thing. Very good.
And I don't know if you caught any of the Hard to Kill pay-per-view, but one thing I noticed, and yes, I knew they had crowds at some of their last couple of events, but they had a good crowd, and a good crowd that looked like a good crowd. I don't mean it was like a 400-seat venue and it was full of 400. It looked like they had over 1,000. There was more people than you could see on camera, where the camera's facing, you can't see all the way in the back, kind of thing. I'm not saying it was a full sold-out arena.
But it had a good attendance.
It was a crowd in which felt like a crowd. I guess that's the best way to put it.
So the percentage-wise, you think I don't have the numbers. I don't think you have the numbers. But do you think the percentage-wise, it was probably a better percentage of seats taken up versus seats vacant compared to AEW?
Well, I mean, I know this one was a sold-out crowd. That's not fair to compare because AEW this past week was at a big arena, and they were not sold out by a long shot.
I think they only had a third
this
capacity.
Was pretty sold out. I guess it's kind of strange. What I'm trying to say is when Impact had the crowd, it still felt like a small studio audience. It still felt like just like an exclusive few. This felt like a good crowd that you'd want to take a picture of from like the camera area to kind of show the whole crowd.
Show the
Again,
whole
this
view.
wasn't, upper decks and an arena style crowd, but it was just like it had that energy. It had
That's
that
good.
like there's some rafters where some people are watching from. There's some bleachers that have people. There's people farther than the eye can see. I mean, if you turn the lights on, not farther than I can see, but with the way they had it going.
Yeah, the way the lighting was.
And it was loud. It was enough people to generate the wrestling noise. And that's why we like wrestling when there's a crowd, even when we're not in part of that crowd, is because it generates that kind of energy that transcends through the TV. As we move to Monday, and we were talking about our friend Shelton Benjamin, former Charlie Haas tag team partner. The big thing was a tag team that's similar to Charlie Haas and Shelton Benjamin in that whole what were they called? The world's greatest tag team. They had that
Oh,
they had that great Olympic style kind of show off that they were the pure athletes. Well, the pure athletes, I guess, if you take Otis out of the equation.
Whoa, hey, back it up there. Otis, just because he's built the way he's built, he's a phenomenal athlete.
I would say the Charlie Haas, though, of our current WWE roster, which is Chad Gable.
Oh, I'd say Chad Gable's better.
Teaming up with
even
Otis, surprising everybody, winning the tag belts from Rated RK. I was going to say Rated RK. That takes me back. RK Bro.
Yes.
Which was surprising to many. Jordan here at the station, who was watching the college football championship game, even tweeted out that he saw that, Randy Orton went out with kind of without a whimper. Like, it wasn't one of those, like, it was kind of anticlimactic for them to lose in this way after being champions for so long.
Yeah, that was, the way the finish was a little odd, but I don't mind the way the finish. I don't mind the end result of the finish. I am very high on Chad Gable. I'm very high on Otis. I think they could do some great things in the tag team division. Eventually, what I'd like to see, which all tag teams break up at some point. It's just how it goes. I want to see Chad Gable in a major singles title picture. That's what I want to see. Watching him and Randy just go back and forth in the ring. That's fun. Like, if you're watching that and you're not enjoying that, then I don't know. Do you have a pulse? Like, Chad Gable is one of the best technicians in the ring. He doesn't get enough credit for what he's done. Yes, he's a former Olympian. We get that, but they don't put him in big match situations. And if they ever put him in a decent match situation, he usually loses. So when he gets the tag titles, him and Otis, it's fantastic because Chad Gable is a guy that needs to be a singles champion.
So much better than when they were giving us that Shorty G crap. So much better.
The Shorty G stuff sucked. That was awful. That was That was such a waste of his character. Like, let him be. He's more himself right now. I feel like he's more comfortable. He's delivered good promos. I think he's the most comfortable he's been because I feel like he's being more himself. And when you're more yourself, it's not forced. It's not awkward. You're just being yourself. And here's the thing. I heard some chants in the crowd about it. When they won as the match was happening, I heard some chants there. So, I mean, there's some fans that are starting to hitch their wagons to Otis and Gable.
One thing I will say that we got from Rated I was going to call him Rated RK Bro. That would be like a 6-man tag right there. Mm-hmm. We did see Edge this past week, obviously continuing the storyline as he had Beth Phoenix on part of the Cutting Edge. But as we move back to that tag team, one thing I guess I wanted to ask you, one question that Matt Riddle asked Randy Orton, and I don't know how familiar you are, if you're a Philly guy, if you've traveled to Philly enough, but are you a Gino or Pat's guy when it comes to cheesesteaks?
I haven't had either.
You haven't had either. No. I wasn't sure if you have or not, but
I've been to Philly. I just haven't. I've been to Philly. I went to a Phillies game many years back. It was one of those quick, go to a ballpark, watch the game, get out of Dodge. I haven't been, but Graves said a different steak place.
He said Tony Luke's. So
which I heard I've heard that's a
I've
top
never
one.
been to Tony Luke's. I have been to Gino's, Pat's, and then I've been to Jim's Steaks on South Street, which is another good one. And I'd actually take that over Gino and Pat's.
There you go.
One thing what stinks about all these places is that they know that they're famous and they know that they're worth going to, is like none of them have indoor seating. And the one time I went to Pat's, this was no lie. I went to Pat's one time when I was in Philly for the day, just taking a trip there, and you had to eat out, get it, to go. I had to eat in my car because it was literally, and what I mean by this, it was one of those days, it was like a Valentine's Day a couple of years ago where like from Tuesday to Thursday, nowhere in the Northeast was higher than 0 degrees Fahrenheit for like 3 days in a row.
So you're freezing your ass
It was
off.
like I couldn't, like anytime I went anywhere, it was like get out of the car and run to wherever I was going and then run back or whatever.
Yeah.
It was not like it wasn't like one of those you like walk around the city all day kind of
which is coming up here in Syracuse.
But I got the Pats, brought it to my car, and then about a year ago I went to Gino's. Gino's does the Cheese Whiz. They were okay. I can't complain. Probably like Pat's a little bit more. But then I went to Jim's Steak. Actually, I was driving to Atlantic City and I said, let's stop in Philly for dinner. And most people, when they stop, they mean they stop off the highway and they go to like a McDonald's. I pulled right up into downtown Philly. It was a Monday night, so it was kind of dead. Got a parking spot right in front of the place because it's right in downtown. And it was pretty good. Now, Tony Luke's, I'm familiar with that place because there's a few locations. There's some like in the malls nearby. I actually recently was in Baltimore, and there was one in the casino. They had like a food court in the casino. And there was a Tony Luke's in there. And there's one right next door. And I'd imagine why this Corey Graves and many others choose it. It's literally like a block from the old ECW arena.
That would make sense.
It's probably, of all the ones that are closest to the main arenas, right there on the south side where the Phillies and the Eagles and all the arenas are. There's a Tony Luke's right around the corner. I think the original one, because it's not in a nice neighborhood. It's like not in an area that looks like a strip mall. It's in like a place that looks like it probably is the original.
Yeah, it's probably the OG
So
place.
that's the only one I haven't tried. But right now I'm a Jim's Steak person, but staying with Raw in Philadelphia, Dewdrop becomes a new #1 contender. What do you feel about Dewdrop? I like it personally just because we've seen the others and we'll have time to see the others. I don't imagine a long-term championship reign with Dewdrop. It's just nice to see something different for a change.
Yeah, I think
switch it up.
I think it's good just I would say just to break up the monotony of the same wrestlers getting the same matches against the same opponents. It's good. She's not winning. I mean, I know we're gonna preview Royal Rumble here coming up in a few weeks, but here's the thing: she's not winning. Like it's just, I think it's just to give Becky someone to wrestle in between now and WrestleMania.
Yeah. No, and I like that. And it's kind of the same idea of like why I kind of didn't really want to see Brock Lesnar versus Bobby Lashley just yet, because we can get to WrestleMania, we can get to these bigger matches. We don't really need. I guess maybe if Brock Lesnar defends the championship at the next pay-per-view in February, which looks like it's going to be in Saudi Arabia, there hasn't been an announcement yet of anything in America.
It's looking that way.
It's looking that way for the most part because tickets for the Royal Rumble are on sale, tickets for WrestleMania are on sale, and between those two events, there's no tickets on sale. Like if there was a pay-per-view in February in the United States, that'd be 4 weeks from now. You'd think it would be on sale. At least we'd know the location, at least, right?
Yeah.
So imagine it's probably going to be in Saudi Arabia, and imagine Brock Lesnar's probably going to have to be a part of that because if it's in Saudi Arabia, it's not going to be like Fastlane. It's going to have to be another
really good show.
There's going to have to be another WrestleMania-esque. They're going to pull out the Goldbergs, the Brock Lesnar's, who knows, the Undertakers. Who knows?
Yeah,
but
exactly.
So maybe Brock Lesnar will have to fight a lesser opponent at that event. I imagine he's not going to be cleared of not being able to go to that event. He'll have to put the title on the line for sure. But I don't mind Dewdrop. I like everybody else. Piper Niven would be a better solution here. Now that she's without Eva Marie, can we give her back the Piper Niven name?
They're really rolling with Dewdrop, I think.
And the Piper Niven name, I think, really gives it gives it a little more like fierceness to her. Piper Niven, it gives it more like that Tony Storm coming over from NXT UK, like a little mix of like the Tony Storm, Raquel Gonzalez. Like she's a bigger, tougher, like a Drew McIntyre.
I mean, her handle for a long time was like Viper Piper or something.
Yeah. Well, and that would be, and that would be kind of give her like that kind of like that more brash, kind of like leather jacket wearing kind of badass.
I would like that. I mean, she's a unique competitor and she does a lot of unique things in the ring and she does a hell of a job. She has the skills. I think she's got a bright future anyways.
So Tuesday, WWE, the news for them was the fact that they're getting sued by MLW because MLW says they're enough of their monopoly. They're sick and tired of what they consider.
Yeah, antitrust lawsuit, yeah.
Some of the stuff that they're arguing makes a little bit of sense. MLW, I remember, was scheduled to be on Vice, and apparently WWE kind of blockaded that. They didn't obviously blockade it in a legal way, more or less just use their influence saying, hey, you know that show Dark Side of the Ring that's really popular on your channel? We think it's a really cool show, and you think it's a really cool show. And sometimes you guys have talent that, we kind of help give you. The Jerichos of the world back in the day, or, the Mick Foleys of the world. We bring it to their attention that there's interview opportunities. And I've heard WWE actually has brought to their attention some of the topic ideas. Said, hey, we'll give you some footage for this. We'll give you the idea for this. Obviously, I feel like Dark Side of the Ring feels like they're doing their own thing, but especially too, because when you watch it, you're like, WWE would never approve this. But apparently, maybe they are a little bit.
Maybe they kind of have a hands-off approach, I think. Like, they're kind of keeping their eye on it, but I don't think they're fully in.
So, in which they said that they're going to be really hands-off and not help them all one bit if they end up keeping MLW on Vice. So, MLW never made it over to Vice. And apparently, MLW was also trying to be on Tubi as well, which is a partnership with Fox. And, obviously, WWE apparently said some things to Fox and some Fox executives.
It was at the 11th hour, so to speak. It was like last minute, and they just nixed the deal.
Yeah.
No.
So MLW is bringing forth a lawsuit saying, they're having a hard time competing because they're doing things that are not right. And, I have to, in this sense, agree. I remember talking a couple of years ago about the whole Triple H calling up personally to Madison Square Garden to try to get them so they couldn't run the New Japan Ring of Honor Supercard show at the Garden the night before WrestleMania. Unfortunately, Sinclair got on them about it and said, you can't do this. And the last minute, Madison Square Garden gave them back the show. I think they pulled it and then gave it back to them. Remember, NXT had to move their show to Friday night and the Hall of Fame to Saturday, so NXT wasn't going head-to-head with New Japan.
Yep, I remember that.
WWE didn't want to do that. They wanted to do the Hall of Fame. They wanted to do NXT. They had, they kind of screwed WWE in a way because they had to set the arena up to be a wrestling arena, and then they had to tear it down to be a Hall of Fame arena, and then they had to set it back up for the Monday Night Raw. They wanted to be lazy. They wanted to have the podium, have it there set up for the Hall of Fame, and then set the wrestling ring up, and then just and then wrestling without, you just flip the graphic on the scoreboard.
You're done.
Yeah, but they made them. So that's why we had that weird Hall of Fame in 2019 where they're like doing the inductions in the ring.
Well, yeah, I forgot about that too.
Yeah. Because they didn't want to tear the ring fully down and then set it back up, so they just kind of set it up to put on the presentation.
That was the night when somebody attacked Bret Hart, wasn't it?
That is correct.
Yeah.
I personally didn't like it that way. I didn't like the fact because also the way that they were doing it was you're facing one side of the crowd, you're facing the camera. When it was on the end, you're facing everybody. Everybody kind of, it's like a stage presentation.
Yeah, everybody.
Here, like you have all these people behind you. It's not. They tried. I remember Corey Graves and I think Renee Young or something when they were doing the hosting duties. They were like, nothing better than giving your speeches in the ring because that's where it's like.
Well, yeah, they're just trying to sell it. That's all.
Yeah, they're just trying to sell it. But so it's for good reason there that WWE didn't want to be running their NXT show against New Japan, so WWE had to move a show because of some other company. But they tried not to. But Sinclair called their bluff. MLW is going to try to do the same and see if they can. Show WWE that they can't control the world of wrestling. And finally, we move on to Wednesday. Corey Graves cleared to wrestle. We've heard rumors and rumblings of this for a long time.
But now it's official.
But it's now official. We saw him win the 24/7 belt not too long ago. And I imagine that a spot in the Royal Rumble is probably on the horizon.
Oh, I would be very surprised if Graves is not doing something in the ring at the Rumble here.
I guess being in the Rumble, I feel like you don't even really have to be cleared to be in the Rumble. We've had the Jerry Lawlers, the Drew Carey's, all these other people in the Royal Rumble. I'm more or less interested in what he's going to do outside of the Royal. The Rumble's nothing. I mean, Byron Saxton and Jerry Lawler and Michael Cole get in the Rumble left and right. It's more or less what he's going to do in an actual match
he's
following the Rumble that I'm interested in.
Corey Graves, before his injury, he was on his way to being a big time player in WWE. I mean, he had matches with Sami Zayn. He had a great match with Seth Rollins. I mean, he was in the NXT Championship picture back in the day. So
it's hard to believe.
Yeah, and that match with Seth Rollins, if I'm not mistaken, the way it finished out, there was the Shield back in the day with Dean Ambrose and Roman Reigns attacked him. So. And the thing is, Corey Graves has so many great relationships with folks. Like I think I want to say that him and Seth Rollins and are really good friends.
It is really kind of strange that they ever gave him the announcing opportunity. I mean, it's a long time ago now. We're talking 5+ years ago, 6 years ago.
He got medically disqualified in 2014, so it's been 7-8 years.
And the fact though that there's so many people, and I guess his look doesn't give you like the Byron Saxton kind of look.
No, it's not.
His look doesn't do that at all. So the fact that he had that kind of grungy, mentality, that kind of, punk rocker thing, and they're like, hey, we want to keep you around. I mean, how many people, as we see, do they release every single day?
Well, obviously,
so for him to not get released and to be given another opportunity, because they release wrestlers who were capable of wrestling. So for a wrestler to say, I'm not capable of wrestling, and I'm not even anybody really people notice yet, they could have easily said, like, listen, we don't have anything invested in you.
Bye.
Nobody even knows who you are.
And here's
out
the
you
thing.
go.
Well, the WWE finally, they did something right. They found something with him, and let's see what he does in the ring, but he at least is a great commentator, so God forbid something does happen, he has that to fall back on because he's pretty good at it.
I still have the claim to fame that I used to see him without recognizing him, but I used to see him a lot of time in the indies in like 05, 06, 07, and I remember outside of Ford Field, Wrestlemania 23, and it's so funny to this day. It's one of my favorite stories, Wrestlemania 23. I'm sitting there waiting to get in with a crowd of people around 4 o'clock in the afternoon or whatever it was. And right behind me, I hear on the phone a guy saying, John McChesney, who was my favorite indie wrestler at the time, wrestled in Syracuse and Rochester and a bunch of other places. So, John McChesney, do you have the tickets or not? And I could kind of hear through the phone. He said, I'm talking with like somebody right now who might be able to get us tickets. And I turned around and said, did you say John McChesney? And the guy said, yeah, you know John McChesney? He said, yeah, the wrestler from like Rochester, New York. And he's like, yeah. I'm like, oh my God, he's my favorite wrestler. He's here. He's like, well, he is, but he's out like trying to get tickets. We're talking to scalpers and we're talking to other people. And I was like, really? He's like, oh, you go to a lot of wrestling shows in Rochester. I was like, yeah, my friend's roommate is a wrestler in Rochester. So we go to all the shows. And he's like, hey, do you know me? And I was like, who are you? And he's like, Sterling James Keenan. And he shows me his tattoos that Stay Down. And I was like, if you're wrestling on the card, then yeah, probably. And he's like, me and John McChesney, any card he's on, I'm like pretty much always there. I'm wrestling in Buffalo and Rochester.
How funny
and I was
is
like,
that?
I will keep an eye out for you, sir. And he's like, well, hopefully we get into this wrestling show. John McChesney apparently is going to get some tickets off a scalper because we don't have tickets. We just drove here from a wrestling show last night. We drove here to Detroit. It's not too far, probably like from Buffalo, 4 hours or whatever through Canada. And he's like, WrestleMania, why not? Thought we'd give it a try, come out here, see if we can get our hands on some tickets and go to WrestleMania because who don't want to go to WrestleMania?
Sounds like something you'd do.
And I'm like, well, I hope you get in. And he's like, yeah, I hope we get in too.
So 15
and then a couple years
ago,
later, he's getting into WrestleMania pretty easy. He's getting it much easier this time around.
Yeah, I was going to say 15 years ago, you had this conversation like, who the hell are you? And now we know who the hell he is because he's one of the most famous faces.
And let me tell you, then that shows you. You hear the stories on all the documentaries and all this stuff like that. But I was physically there to see. You see the Sasha Banks posing and the Velveteen Dreams and the Ricochets posing at the meet and greets, just like a regular fan. Like, I was there. I was watching him and an indie wrestler whom I thought was a bigger deal than him at the time, and who I thought probably had a better shot of ever making the WWE. I was watching them approach scalpers to get tickets so that they could go to WrestleMania and probably have crappier seats than I did, because I had some pretty decent seats. I had like 100 level seats for that WrestleMania. Just trying to get in the door to watch WrestleMania. Nowadays this guy is helping probably write WrestleMania. And
he gets paid to be at the show, so
he gets he gets paid to commentate and call WrestleMania. And at that time, he was just like me, trying to get in. At that time, John McChesney was an indie wrestler. It was so funny. He was one of the first guys I ever saw ever get a squash match. So I just started, watching indie wrestling like more full time. I've been to some shows in high school, but really random and really small. But this was the first time that I went to an indie show, and I believe Raw was in Rochester. I want to say 06. This is why I was probably a bigger fan of him, is that he got squashed by Umaga.
Oh, wow.
In 2006 on a Monday Night Raw to help build up Umaga.
Of course.
And that obviously then when he returned to the indie scene and I was going to more indie shows, I was like, this guy's in this guy's corner. I was like, that guy was just on Raw. Like, that guy's awesome. I wanted his shirt. I wanted,
So what's he doing these days?
I don't believe I think he might still be indie wrestling.
Gotcha.
But I don't know for sure, but he never made it to the
big show.
He never made it to the big show. That's as far as he went. I don't know. how tight he currently is with Corey Graves, Sterling James Keenan, or whatever is, we want to call him in real life.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you. I assume they're probably still friends.
Yes.
I mean, that's the thing. Graves seems like the kind of guy if you were rolling down the road with him back when they had $10 to their name, even if they become famous, they're still.
Listening to Corey Graves' podcast, he has all those stories, with Adam Pearce and all this stuff, and
Adam
still
Pearce
mentions it to this day. It's not like these are long forgotten things. He talks about the fact that he worked at the mall during the week so that he could get enough money to drive to Rochester from Pittsburgh, or drive to Buffalo from Pittsburgh, or drive anywhere else in Pennsylvania.
Just to do a show.
Just to do a show, and then would be happy if he got paid.
That's the difference that people don't understand. A lot of people don't understand about wrestling is it's a tough business. Not everybody gets it handed to them. It's, when you see, that's why a lot of fans they get like yourself. You get behind somebody you saw at an indie fed, and you want to watch them climb their way up the ladder. So when they get to the top of the mountain, like a Bryan Danielson, so to speak, you're like, I saw him at this place, at this local VFW 10 years ago.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I mean, I remember getting a picture that same weekend. I got a picture at a Ring of Honor show when Ring of Honor just started running shows like around WrestleMania weekend. I went to a Ring of Honor show the night before WrestleMania 23 in Detroit, and I saw like Nigel McGuinness, Christopher Daniels, and Jimmy Jacobs. And I might have even seen Tyler Black on that card. I'm not 100% sure, but I mean, he could have been on that card before he was Seth Rollins. Yeah. You never know. But also on Wednesday, one final thing is WWE apparently showing some interest in Wardlow. He had a match last night.
I mean, he has the prototypical size. I mean, if they didn't want Wardlow, I'd be very surprised. Look, when I saw that news making the rounds, I'm like, duh. Like, WWE, big, strong, good-looking guy. You don't think they want him?
On Wednesday, AEW, right as soon as they started hearing these rumors, put out a tweet that linked to a story from another wrestling website that said why Wardlow wants to be an AEW lifer.
Okay, I don't believe that for a second. If WWE offers him more money than AEW, who's gone? MJF, same thing. If he gets offered more money than what AEW is doing, he's gone.
But as CM Punk said, he'll be gone and he'll main event night 4 of a 4-night buy one get one extravaganza.
Meanwhile, CM Punk sat on the sidelines for 7 years. So.
Well, I mean, we'll see what happens with Wardlow. He fell to CM Punk at the opening match.
What a terrible way for him to lose too. They should just let it go to a DQ.
This hasn't been the best week for AEW. They've had some really good weeks, but this hasn't been the best week. And I say that because one thing we talked about on Saturday is the fact that Hard to Kill pay-per-view. A lot of people said it's one of the best Impact Wrestling events in a long time. Obviously the Mickie James thing, but one thing that really overshadowed was they were pulling off that Battle of the Belts, and I think the Impact pay-per-view took more notoriety and more press in the wrestling world and had more eyeballs of wrestling fans on it than that Battle of the Belts did. That saw Sammy Guevara become the new interim TNT champion.
Yeah, that's to me that's the ridiculous interim TNT champion.
How long are they expecting Cody Rhodes to be out?
Who the hell knows? I think it's.
Long enough where we need to have somebody else hold the belt.
Why don't they just make him drop the belt, build him, and then let him heal up, put him in a storyline when he comes back to go get his title that he never lost.
Or, just, I guess the fact that, let him hold on to the belt for a little bit before we know that it's going to be a very, very long time.
Yeah, I don't like interim
Obviously,
belts.
we talked about the effects of the crowd this week, just watching on TV. So I knew ahead of time that the crowd was not very good.
Yeah, I saw the lighting.
Because I watched the lighting, and I know that you could see everybody that was around ringside, but you could not see one person that was in essentially the bleachers, the first row, the upper deck. I know that everyone darkens out the upper deck, but we're talking the lower level was darkened off. And I've seen some shows, wrestling shows historically back in the day, some of these companies that are trying to be big shots, the XPWs of the world, and they run these big arenas, and then they only sell a couple rows on the floor.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They run a 7,000 seat arena, and then they're only selling floor seats. They're not even, anybody's not even sitting in the bleachers.
Yeah,
and that's what this looked like. I could see those little lights that are were on the steps that go up each aisleway. I could see the lights, and then everything else was just black.
Yeah, nobody sitting there.
It wasn't like WWE's red lights or a little dim. I mean, it was black.
Yeah, there was the attendance there was not good.
Which is weird because it's North Carolina, the Flair country. WCW country.
Yeah,
they
it's the
they
Four
did pretty
Horsemen
good
country.
in Greensboro the other day, but apparently Raleigh, North Carolina. I never really cared for Raleigh, North Carolina. I've been there a few times. It's not my favorite kind of city. It's weird that they have an NHL team because when you go there, that's the NHL team. Yes, they have NC State and they're near Duke and they're near North Carolina University, but it doesn't give off a pro city. Like, it's weird that they have a professional hockey team at that level because it doesn't give off that, Charlotte's got the NFL, the NBA.
Carolina's, that part of Carolina is a nice area.
It's just weird because it's just not a city. They have an NHL team, but that's it. Like, Buffalo's got an NHL and an NFL, and some other cities got an NBA and NFL. You got 2 out of 4, let's say. They've got 1 out of 4, which is a weird thing to say.
That's all right.
What other cities have 1 out of 4 teams? I guess Green Bay, but I would consider that to be more like Milwaukee.
I wouldn't call it Milwaukee.
I know they're far from Milwaukee, but
I would say it's Green. I would
in
say
the
Green
90s,
Bay.
the Green Bay Packers played half of their games in Milwaukee and half at Lambeau Field. I just learned about that recently, that they were actually playing half their games in Milwaukee when they had Lambeau Field, which is like, one of the most historic places.
It's like the cathedral for football.
But in order to keep the market tied together, they want them to play. In fact, I think Brett Favre's first playoff game as a Green Bay Packer that he hosted was in Milwaukee and not at Lambeau Field.
Was it? I didn't see. I don't.
I think it was like
1995.
1995. He hosted. He was the host team for a playoff game as the quarterback
In Milwaukee,
and they played at the Milwaukee County Stadium.
Wow, I didn't know that.
And the reason I guess they don't play there now is because there is no stadium. They built that Brewer Stadium to be baseball specific. Back then, the baseball stadium was big enough to host football. Milwaukee
And
County
actually,
Stadium.
fun fact, I believe off the top of my head, I think the Milwaukee County Stadium actually was where they filmed the movie, the Major League.
Maybe you might be right. I know that they probably filmed it at a few different spots.
Yeah.
But it could be right on that aspect. We're talking Green Bay Packers and some football as we head into football weekend, NFL playoffs, but hopefully some more wrestling news to talk about. We'll talk about it when it occurs. For Brandon, I'm Jared. One final thing. I just want to make note before we go off the air. The accurate name for this upcoming, because he's a big Dallas Cowboy fan, I just want you to know that if we're being real and we're being honest here, it's the Santa Clara 49ers versus the Arlington Cowboys.
Don't even start with that. It's
neither team even
America's team is where we go.
Neither team even play in the same county.
America's team. That's it.
The Cowboys don't even play in the same county as Dallas.
Don't even bring up Arlington. All you got to say is America because it's America's team.
All right. At least he's admitting that they shouldn't be called the Dallas
I didn't
Cowboys.
admit
They should be
anything.
called the
I'm just admitting they're America's
Cowboys.
team.
For Brandon, I'm Jared. This has been another edition of the Heel to the Face podcast.